Are we going to the theater less often? So I want to give you the most holistic picture. Censorship. Before it reaches our audience, the governments come in. I don't get it. We don't see that kind of innovation happening in cinema. Cinemas are in a unique position. These are experiences that you just can't recreate online. I don't care what Netflix party feature you use, one of my all-time favorite movies. They definitely have a future. So if you watch the news and specifically business media, you'd often hear of the word disruption. So a certain industry is being disrupted by a new and upcoming player, usually a startup. And in this case, for cinemas is positioned as the traditional business, and streaming is apparently the disruptor. So as streaming kicks in, we're going to go to the cinema less often, is what I keep reading about. Now, little surprise, we had the largest box office last year in 2019. These are just the top 5 movies you're seeing over here. Avengers, Lion King, Frozen, Spider-Man. These are movies that all grossed over $1 billion while they were in theater all around the world. Interestingly, Joker was the first movie that was rated R, so not everyone could view it, but Joker was the first movie to gross over $1 billion. Being a rated movie. If we look at this global box office broken down into some key geographies from 2015 to 19, you'll notice a couple of things. US and Canada have been relatively consistent at about 11.4 billion. So that is what they're bringing in terms of cinema revenue every single year. Interestingly, the number either goes up or down every single year. It's actually alternating every year. If you notice, that's an interesting trend. Europe and Latin America also relatively consistent, but what's the most interesting over here is Asia Pacific. Asia has a huge population, obviously, and also by far the maximum number of theater screens. But also, given the population, there's a lot more room for growth, and they're continuing to invest in multiplexes and single screens throughout the countries. So we would see much more growth here in Asia, and that is going to contribute to the global figures for box office going up. Let's also compare how cinema is doing compared to streaming and discs. So the sale of Blu-ray discs and DVDs, discs, streaming, and cinemas. If you look at how that is changing from 2015 to 19, again, here you see box office is rising, cinemas revenue is going up. This of course excludes all the revenue they make from snacks and condiments, but this is purely box office revenue compared with how much revenue streaming services are bringing in through their subscription fees, and how much of CD sales are happening all around the world. Discs, streaming, and cinemas, this is also an interesting trend to look at. Discs are going down in terms of sales, obviously, but it's also a huge number. If you think about it, 10 billion in CD sales is a little shocking to me when there is so much streaming and of course the choice you have to go to the cinemas. It's a little surprising that that's still at 10 billion. Maybe that's because 4K video is still picking up in many parts of the world. So as that becomes more mainstream, streaming should take over that segment. But cinemas are continuing to rise. Just keep that in mind. Also, I just wanted to add that Netflix, in addition to their main subscription business, is also now in the cinema business. It's not that many, but they are just steadily opening a few nice theaters. Primarily in the US. They started with the Old Paris Theater in New York City. They got that in November 2019. And the kind of movies they show over here are mostly Emmy winners or Oscar nominees, like Marriage Story and The Irishman. The Irishman is one of my all-time favorite movies, if you haven't already checked that out. But yeah, they would be showing sort of the movies that they expect to be receiving awards in cinemas, not just to qualify for it, obviously, but also to give users the choice to watch these movies in the cinema, in addition to having it available online at the same time. Netflix is also set to acquire the Egyptian Theater, which is probably the most iconic theater ever. It is in the heart of Hollywood, so we'll see how that plays out probably sometime this year. But think of Netflix's move into cinema exactly like how Apple moved into retail. So Apple still has a lot of a lot of online distributors, a lot of authorized dealers, and of course their own online store. But in addition to all of this, when I say Apple retail, what do you think about? You think about the physical stores, the amazing experience you have over there, the great customer service, and just the overall the vibe of the place. That's what you think about when I say the Apple Store, because that is the experience they've created, and now they have an edge over Samsung, Microsoft, and all these other guys who kind of have stores but not as cool and not as common as the Apple stores, which have become, you know, historic landmarks in different cities. So that definitely adds to their presence and probably increases even online sales. So think of Netflix's move into cinema exactly the same way.